Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 499. We tackle the Lazarus Contract crossover. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, the Duke of and of course the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode we're going to do the Full Titans crossover, and actually that kicks off in Titans issue number 11, ends in Deathstroke issue number 20, which is the epilogue issue. So a lot to discuss in that crossover that goes through Titans, Teen Titans, and Deathstroke. So we're glad you can join us for this one as we are on the eve of our 500th episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
You make that sound ominous. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Mr. Segulin, as always, sponsoring us this episode is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, oh my God. DCBS is really doing an awesome job for us this month. I've multiple times I talk about my bundles, and they're doing a really cool Dark Knights metal special bundles. There's a couple. Issue number 1 of the Dark Knights Metal special series going on. They're bundling all 5 of those together in one bundle, 50% off of that bundle. But also within the other bundles, you still have the regular ongoing Dark Knights Metal series issues 2 and 3 inside one of the other Rebirth bundles. Again, 50% off, as well as the mini-series bundle, 50% off. The Universe Rebirth bundle number 2, 50% off. Bundle, 50% off. Bundle, 50% off. Multiple bundles, 50% off, plus also the variant covers at 45% off. So you can get all the variant covers, boom, one click. You can get the Dark Knight specials, boom, one click. They're doing some great stuff for the comic collector, and I absolutely love it. But DCBS is not just about the comics. They have some really cool statues, some really cool action figures, and the one I am 100% getting right now is Jonathan Kent and his dog Crypto package. It's 20% off, only $51.91. You get both Jonathan and Crypto right there. I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I can't wait to order this and can't wait to get this. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I really love the deals of the week. And there's one I really want to spotlight, Absolute Y the Last Man. This is volume 3 of the hardcover collections in Absolute Edition. This completes the series. So if you've never read Y the Last Man, first of all, I can't recommend the series enough. But when you get to volume number 3, you get the complete story in Absolute Editions. I'm loving that they're doing this with Vertigo. They're doing it with Preacher right now, and they're doing it with Y the Last Man. Y is did you read Y at all, Jim, or have you completed it, or where are you at?
I have not completed it yet. So, and I'm getting these Absolutes, and I'm getting the things, and trying to make sure I have the full volume, and I'll sit down because I've got a bunch of trades, I've got a bunch of floppies, so I'm just right now focusing on getting these Absolutes, make sure I have the full series, then I'm going to sit down and do a read through in one.
I read Planetary this way. I never read Planetary, and I heard nothing but good things about Warren Ellis's Planetary series. And it was collected in 2 Absolute Edition volumes. It's a great way to read a series. Obviously, it's a great way to read a series that's beloved, that you've read before, and to revisit it in that larger format. But when it's something you haven't read all the way through, it's an incredible way to experience the series. And Y the Last Man is gorgeous artwork. It's a great Brian K. Vaughan story. Definitely well worth. It's the highest possible recommendation. It's 50% off, only $62.50 for an Absolute volume. That's an incredible price point. So definitely want to check that out over at InStockTrades.com. They also have from the Young Animals, Cave Carson has a Cybernetic Eye, 50% off, only $8.49. Great way to check out that series at a discount. The Wonder Woman 100 Project trade paperback, collecting all the covers with backstory behind the development, 50% off, only $6.49. So there's a lot of great content to get in these discounts when you do these deals of the week over at InStockTrades.com. Check them out weekly because they're constantly changing, and it's really good material. So I want to thank you, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show, reminding everyone they're a digital partner as well. Comixology, My Digital Comics, make sure to link those accounts at DCBService.com. Shop through their portal. 5% of those purchases goes towards your DCB service order, so it's a great way to make money for something you're already purchasing and helping out our show sponsor. Mr. Seguin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you're ever in the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk Lazarus Contract.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
So, Jim, the big Titans crossover just happened, the Rebirth crossover with Teen Titans, and Deathstroke, the Lazarus Contract. I was really excited for this because, first of all, you suggested, like, hey, we really should talk about Titans and Deathstroke and all that on the episode because we haven't talked about these books, I think, for all of them since their launch. So it's nice now we're almost a year into these series, depending on which series it is, and a lot has happened. A lot of change has happened in these particular titles with the status quo with these characters. But also, traditionally, some of my favorite epic stories have come out of the Teen Titans universe with Deathstroke involved. I mean, Judas Contract goes down as one of my all-time favorites. I really like that this one is not trying to be a rehash of an old story. The reason why is Judas Contract's a classic. So to try and rebirth it up and like do it again doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. To do Lazarus Contract where it's like we find out that there's been a secret and a secret agreement that's been kept between Nightwing and Deathstroke back to his Robin days. And this secret has basically was a Lazarus Contract, something that could be, it kept them at peace. But if any part of that piece was broken, the contract could be reborn again and then brought back in. So I thought it was just really great the way that it felt very Deathstroke, it felt very Titans. I thought that the writers did a really nice job of gelling each issue of this, where it felt like a big story. This is one where the payoff all the way through, and the way it dropped all of the books back into their current status quo with some changes, really felt like this story has an impact that's going to resonate for issues and issues to come in each of the titles. And that's important to me in a crossover. You want to feel like, why did we do this? How does it impact the characters? Does it just impact one book, or does it impact multiple titles? In this case, multiple. Really well done. I really enjoyed this a lot. Where were you at on this one?
Oh, dude, I dig this, man. It was funny because with all three of these titles, I got behind on them. Uh-huh. You know, and when the first issues came out, I'm reading, going, man, this is cool. I'm digging where they're going with the title. And then life just happened, and I got this massive gap between them. You know, and I had initially intended on, I'm going to do the back reading, get caught up, and then read the contract for the show and all that. And you kind of threw out the idea, hey, let's just jump into this series and not get caught up. And just, you know, let issue 1 of issue 11 of Titans, you know, the first part of it be just jump backing point back to these titles. And I did that for this series, where this has been the only books I've read recently on these titles, and it's gotten me just so jazzed to go back and read the back issues again. And you know, I wanted to wait until we were done talking about this before I go into the back issues, but I've got them sitting right here, and as soon as we're done recording, I'm going to start reading them, because this was a really great Titans story, a great Teen Titans story, and a great Deathstroke story. And I always like to say the difference between Titans and Teen Titans, because there are differences in these teams. There are slight differences, but each one has their own flair. Each one has their own style and their own groove. And I'm so glad that they made sure in this crossover we got to see that.
Yeah, and you know, to your point, similarly to you, I was behind on these titles. And I'm usually one that I have a lot of trouble jumping ahead. I like to read everything in order. It's, you know, and I start to have issues if I don't normally, you know, where it just like bugs me. I like to take my time, really enjoy the issues and things like that. This was freeing. It was actually great to jump. And I would say for anybody, if you like haven't read any of these books, this is a jump on story. The first issue we're going to talk about is Titans number 11, and that's the kickoff of this storyline. And in all honesty, if you're like, I've been, you know, a Titans fan for years, and I just don't want to go back and read the backlog, I don't have the time, you can jump in and read this story. It's a very contained story. I feel fully confident that I understand where the teams are at in each of these books enough right now to keep moving forward. Like you, I want to read the backlog of issues, but I want to read them for joy, because I'm really digging where these books are right now, not because I feel I have to. And I felt like this story was freeing for that for me. It really gives you enough on the status quo that you can read Lazarus Contract, and if you're like, you know what, I can't start picking up these titles regularly, but I just want to read a really good story involving these characters, this would be that story. But I do feel like it gives you, for the fans that have been reading it all along, a great story. For those that are like us, behind on your backlog, you can jump to this and get current, and then gradually go back. Or new readers can read this as a contained piece, or a, hey, do I want to keep going with any of these books moving forward? And I really I feel confident saying that because of the fact that I haven't been caught up on them. And I felt like I didn't feel like I needed anything to enjoy this story. Other than just a rudimentary understanding of who these teams are and that they've had a history with each other, because the story gives it all to you without it being overloaded with that. I felt like they gave you just the right beats of information that you needed to understand the history of these characters, why that history is relevant. Ravager in this and his whole story was expanded compared to what I've read in the past. And I really like that. I like that they took this part, it's Deathstroke's son, something that we know a lot historically about if you've been a long-time reader of Teen Titans. But what they did was they took this character from what Wolfman and Perez did with him so long ago and have expanded the story even more to the point where I really liked the beats that they put in. I felt like I understood this character more. I felt like I cared more when Deathstroke was trying to save him. I'm kind of like, well, I kind of want to see that too. So, it really had the right beats to make you see both sides of the story, because it's hard in this because you want to view Deathstroke as the villain because that's the way the story's going, but yet I've been reading Deathstroke and think Deathstroke of Deathstroke as the hero in that book. So it was an interesting way that they handled this, where I felt like he was wearing both hats, and they did it in a way that I thought was really interesting and compelling in the storytelling. The Ravager pieces were incredible, though. I really felt I felt like I care about this character more than he's just a foil for the purpose of showing us Deathstroke's motivation.
Yeah, and it was funny because throughout this, I really was hoping Deathstroke would bring him back, because Deathstroke has that kind of that Magneto vibe to him, where he's a villain, but there is good. Sometimes it's good. He's got that code, and he's one of those characters that can kind of dance the line between being a good guy one time and a bad guy another. And that's how I always see Magneto, having that same type of groove to him. And you bring in Ravager. Ravager really is more of the dark side of Deathstroke. And you're understanding, with this, we get some great backstory. We kind of understand why the kid the way he is. And part of me wanted to bring back Ravager, because I think that would be neat to have Deathstroke either try to bring him to the light or the kid bring the dad back to the darkness. I thought that would have been a really compelling story going beyond this. So throughout this, I'm kind of rooting for Deathstroke to accomplish his goal.
Yeah, that was the piece that was really interesting. You wanted him to accomplish his goal. I liked that this showed the different dynamics of the teams. The Titans, you mentioned earlier how there's slight differences between the Titans and Teen Titans. The Titans, that sense of longevity, that sense of family that's already in place. In Teen Titans, it's this new team who they're starting to grow closer together. And with a team leader like Damian, who is very hard, he's so much more like his dad than you realize on paper. Actually, I would argue that he's more like Brooding Bats from the past now than Batman even is. And I actually when I was reading this, I'm like, oh, this is why I'm liking what they're doing with Batman so much now, because Damian's kind of taken over that role of the Batman that's really hard to get close to. Damian's really in that spot, whereas Bruce now has kind of evolved in a way that I really am enjoying. So I think that the different Robins offer a very different dynamic, each one of them. Almost elements of their father are manifesting in themselves when you see them in various books. And I really like that Damian's kind of fits that kind of role of the Brooding Bats that I enjoyed back in the day. The Dark Knight and all that type of thing. I like that the Dark Knight's grown because of experience. And for me as a reader, I feel like you talk about a lot about wanting to see progression. And I do feel that that's always been a tenet that I really like in my comics too. I feel like that there's a lot of progression with these characters, and I think that's something that fans, were with the New 52. The fans that I think became lapsed fans, they were missing that progression, that sense of, hey, I've been here for years. I want to feel like these characters have grown with me. Now you've started them over again. Pieces of that are lost for me. I feel like Rebirth is, and this is a great example of a story, that I feel like this takes place with the assumption that much of what happened in the old Teen Titans, pre-New 52, happened. I feel like these are teams who have been, their minds have been changed because of what's happened to this world with the Dr. Manhattan and all that. I feel like these are characters, and the now Abracadabra also having a role in these particular books and what happened. I feel like all of those things have taken place and are a part of this. I really enjoy that feel like this fits into everything that happened pre-Flashpoint.
Oh, I completely agree with you. It's one of the things about with the Rebirth happening and everything that, now that they're kind of bringing back the Flashpoint stuff, and they're starting to bring these stories back, and they've introduced the concept again that there was a previous Teen Titans, and just they're introducing the longevity, and they're starting to have other characters have the flashbacks, starting the other characters starting to remember the previous stuff. And it's, again, this is a story that they're taking their time developing, and it's going to come to a head. And it's kind of neat to see in everyday titles that we're having these moments, that we're having this stuff. And it's one of the things that makes Titans a very cool read, because they are front and center to the whole mystery, with Wally being on the team, but also with everything they dealt with. And now, Deathstroke's getting pulled into the mix. This is, again, this was a great crossover in that it told a great story, but it also has added to the big picture stuff.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I do agree that it's taken the big picture stuff, and I think that's important to me, big picture. I want to feel big picture with these characters, and I do feel big picture with these characters and what's happening here. I love the whole sequence showing, because Rebirth has introduced, this version of Teen Titans has introduced certain characters that were a part of the team that weren't originally a part of the team. We see the new costumes, the new outfits, and things like that were here, like Robin's in particular has changed. But you do get this sense of Ravager's death being very similar to what happened before. And then we flash right to present day with the corneal transplant. I was like sitting here, corneal transplant? When did this happen? I'm starting to get pieces of the puzzle that Deathstroke status quo, things have happened with him that I haven't read yet, that I want to go back and read. This is a really good-looking book. I like Brett Booth's artwork a great deal, so I really enjoyed the art in this issue quite a bit. It's the right kind of art for Teen Titans, and I liked this artist when he was on The Flash, and it was great to see him in this particular book. I love the way that he does action. I love the way that he does costumes and poses and things like that in these particular books, and his characterizations, because Deathstroke's world, Wintergreen's got to be there, right? I really like that element of him having this military guy who understands and respects and has this relationship. And we actually see more of that history spelled out in this particular storyline that I really quite liked. I felt like this developed a lot of backstory for characters that, for me, more with the Titans, more with the Teen Titans, more with Deathstroke. I felt like I'm walking out of this with some continuity filled in. Like, what happened in these characters' past that I found were things that were new or clarified in a way that I hadn't previously. And that part I really enjoyed about this, was getting to know a little bit more of what was their backstory, how did these two become friends, what led to that relationship was a part of this in a way that I thought was really rewarding.
And to go along with your arts, your art comments, one of the things that, again, the action sequences, just the layout, the play, but going from issue to issue to issue, I didn't feel like it didn't feel jarring for me. They had some great this was a great choice of teams, of creation, and just how the story played out, and how visually it went from issue to issue to issue. It was something, because I completely echo sentiments on the artwork in this book, but also you got to say the same thing for the whole series as a whole. This is a story I would love to see them put together, in a either trade or a nice collected edition or something like that you could really sit back and appreciate. Nice oversized, deluxe edition, absolute, whatever version you want to give me. This is one I would pick up in a heartbeat, just because of cool story, but beautiful visual, and then a great combo where they're letting the art tell the story at certain times. They're letting the words tell the story, with flashbacks, with little notes here. New York 1 hour ago, present day, past. They keep boom, boom, boom. They keep you right in line, and you're understanding what you're getting, and what you're getting in front of you.
I also love the editor's notes as far as when Deathstroke was blind.
Yeah.
Issues 12 to 18 led to this whole piece. So I want to go back and read those issues to get kind of caught up on that whole piece, because I haven't read it. So, to your point, I do want to get caught up. I didn't know this happened to him, and it's a book I want to read to get caught up on. I'm catching how far behind I am on certain titles as I'm going through and reading. I am finding myself jumping ahead just so that way I'm caught up to current continuity, and gradually going through. There's certain titles where I'm not, because I'm stubborn, and I want to read them in order. But I've got such a backlog right now, just because of classes and stuff, that I'm glad I have those issues, because I like to get caught up, and I'm going to. But I also want to be current, because big things are going on this summer with Dark Days and things like that. So I know there's going to be a number of titles I have to bump up ahead so I can enjoy Dark Days as it's coming out, especially for the titles that are, I don't know how that's going to work as far as influencing titles, but I do feel like with Dark Days, I want to be current with everything as Dark Days is going on, and kind of want to move forward feeling like I'm at least understanding what's currently going on in the DC universe. Backlogs in that really are an interesting thing for me. Do you find that you have trouble when you've got like 6 issues of a series sitting there that you haven't been able to read? Because that's been the one thing with some titles being twice a month. I love that. I really am enjoying the delivery, but I am finding that my backlog jumps up pretty fast when you've got 2 coming out of a title. I guess I'm finding some freedom now in going, you know what, I really want to read this crossover, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I did the same thing with Batman and the Flash when the button came out. I wasn't caught up on the Flash or Batman at that time, just because of how crazy things have been. So I did get caught up on Batman, but I couldn't on the Flash, and we were going to do the episode on the button. So I read the button and enjoyed it, and then I did eventually get caught up on the Flash again, because I'm digging that title, Something Fierce. But I didn't find like I needed to have read everything to understand where the button was. And I'm just getting used to that, because I'm starting in the fall some classes for my PhD, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to keep comics being what they are for me, fun. And when a crossover comes over, that I really want to read, or we're going to do on the podcast or something like that, I'm just going to jump ahead and read it and enjoy it, and just keep comics in that place, not get stressed. If I have a backlog, what else is new? I think as comic fans, we all have backlogs, small or large, especially if you go to a con and you get deals on things, you can't possibly read everything. I actually marvel at people who are able to stay caught up on everything. I'm envious, actually, because I have trouble with it. And I like having the full story, but this is a great example of where jumping ahead really worked for me on this one. I'm looking at this double-page spread right now after he got out of the hospital of the team, where you got to see Nightwing and the Flash and Donna Troy and Omen, Arsenal, Tempest. Does it bother you that both Wally and Barry are called the Flash?
No. It's funny. It probably should, because of the peculiarities that I have in life. But for some reason, I am okay with them both taking the name The Flash. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because Wally was the Flash. So I've read stories where Wally was the Flash and where Barry's the Flash, and and part of it is just because of the Barry-Wally relationship, and also part of it is I don't know. I kept trying to come up with what kind of name could he go as. Like, I like how Speedy is now Arsenal, and Robin, is Nightwing, and just how they've, Aqualad became Tempest. I like that, but for some reason, Flash is just. That's the good name for it.
Right.
It fits him so well that I'm like, what else can you call him. I'm like, he's the Flash. Yeah, there's multiple Flashes and they've got different looks. But I like how he kept the scarlet color, so he's got the red, which is the Flash. So it's but it's obviously not the same guy, and I like that. And with him, I'm okay with it. If there was somebody else going around calling themselves Superman, I'd have an issue. It's kind of like how with the Green Lanterns, how there's multiple people called Green Lantern because they are this police force, and you would have that's
Jim,
their.
Can I stop you for 1
title.
second there? There is somebody else. There is somebody else going around with the name of Superman.
Yes, I know. And I'm saying that's why I threw that out there.
Oh, you did that on purpose. Okay.
Yes.
I was like, wait a minute. There is another Superman in the DC universe right now.
Yes.
So does that bother you? Actually, it's funny that you're saying that.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
The no is the reasoning behind because it's the whole with the Chinese government, how they're doing it. This is our Superman and that, and I'm okay in that ways where that's why he is out there, why he's calling himself that, and it's kind of it fits in with within the story for him to have that, for him to do that. But I don't know. Part of me wishes he had a different name, and part of me wishes he would say, you know what, he's Superman, I am blah blah blah, and pick a name that is culturally significant, or something that is him, that's personally, or something that personalize who he is. And I think that for me, I would enjoy seeing that character do that. But if somebody else were flying around Metropolis calling themselves Superman, I would have a much bigger issue, just because I'm like, there's one Superman, dude, come on.
Yeah, it's funny. I that storyline in particular, because of the fact that actually it's meant to be they're creating their Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, their Justice League of China. I'm perfectly fine with it. Wally, because he was the Flash, him being the Flash makes sense to me. I like that his costume's totally different. I like that his costume's kind of a hybrid of the Flash costume, the Kid Flash costume when he wore it, and something new. It looks very Wally. You're right. That's one I don't feel the need for him to have a different name. I wouldn't want Robin, Nightwing, going around calling himself Batman still, even though he was Batman. Right. I don't need that. I know that we did that for a little while, but having him go back to being Nightwing made a lot of sense to me. Because that's an identity that's been developed, and it just worked well. I don't have a problem if they gave Wally his own code name, but for some reason I just don't have this urge for that to happen. And you're right, it's unique to that character because, Tempest being Aqualad, formerly being Aqualad, but now being Tempest, makes sense to me. That leaves room for Aqualad to be the one that's on Teen Titans, if that's the way they're going to go with him, because he was in the prior continuity Aqualad. So I don't know. We'll see where that's going to go. It's funny how I look at this team and I'm like, this is the original Titans, but I'm like, well, it's really not though, because Omen wasn't a part of that original team, from the kickoff. I don't have a problem that they've kind of taken this different sort of rebirth approach where this team has been altered because of what happened to them. And it goes beyond Abracadabra. It's what Dr. Manhattan did. So I'm actually loving that there's a continuity reason why this is who they are, and you feel them together. Donna Troy's, I'm glad that they're starting to, really ramp up and explain, her screwy continuity. But that's kind of normal for Teen Titans fans with Donna Troy. Because who is Donna Troy has been a storyline for years in Titans comics. So, yeah, okay, great. So we're back to Donna Troy having kind of a crazy origin. I love the character, so yay. I'm glad that she's wearing, kind of her old costume. And Arsenal works, too, because that character's evolution. So there's a comfort in this. It feels like a very contemporary team, while at the same time having deep connections to this long past that I've really enjoyed with these characters. There's something very welcoming about this for me now, because these are characters, and I'm spending a lot of time gabbing about this because these are characters that are really important to me from back in the day. As a Batman fan growing up, when Wolfman and Perez launched this title, and I was reading Uncanny X-Men, and I looked over and I'm like, oh my gosh, they got Robin leading a team, and the team looks awesome. It was... I knew what the Teen Titans were. I knew them as a concept. I remember them from as a kid growing up in the 70s. Robin would come back and visit Batman from his time with the Titans and from college and from stuff like that. He'd come back and visit. And I'd be like, I wasn't a Titans reader at the time, but I knew of them, and I knew what the concept was. Then when Wolfman and Perez hit, it was like this gorgeous artwork, and I just wanted to read this book. And it wound up being, I was loving what Claremont was doing over at Uncanny, to see what was happening over at DC in a very similar fashion with this depth-filled, smart, intelligent story with these characters that were having romantic entanglements. It was, and deep-rooted emotional conflict amidst these amazing battles and conflicts that were going on. It's just really good stuff. If anybody listen to this, if you haven't read the at least the initial few arcs of the Wolfman and Perez run of Teen Titans, you're greatly missing out on something. And the beauty of it is this has been collected in so many different formats, and it's so easy to get, whether you're getting the trades or hardcovers or digital versions of this. Do yourself a favor, seek this stuff out, because it's really, really high-quality material. And I'm glad it's remaining. I'm glad it's remaining in print, because I think it holds up.
Yes. Oh, big time. Big time holds up. And I completely, I'm going to echo your sentiments and just, yeah. That's the thing I think with this issue it really did drive home the coolness that was Teen Titans in the past. And I think they've done that with the Titans and with Rebirth, when they started bringing back the concept of that there was this past team, and they keep slowly evolving who the team is, and slowly bringing us more back into the picture, bringing them back into the fold. And I'm very happy with that. I don't know if that was the plan all along to do that, or if this was just a reaction, or if this was a creator who had a cool story idea and they're going with it. But I'm very happy to see this has continued. And again, it's little bits of action, little bits of humor, little bits of personal drama really make the Titans and Teen Titans story come alive. And this was a really nice balance of some funny moments versus some serious, holy crud moments, to some, oh, that looks cool moments. And I like that. And, because you got great action sequence, then you go into the Wally interrogation. And that was a combination of, this is cool, to I had the chuckling moments with the verbal laxative Wally was given, and he's just throwing out everything. He's like, "Oh, what did I say? No, I didn't want to say that out loud." I loved, that was something I loved, that, and especially considering it was Deathstroke doing the interrogation. He knows the Titans. He knows what he's doing. This shows the quality of villainy and or just the strategery that is Deathstroke.
You and your strategery. I know it had to come into the episode.
Yep.
It is a character. This whole bit where Lazarus, in the message he sent to Nightwing, he had said a message. He said the deal's off. He said his name is Lazarus. And Nightwing being the one, I didn't catch this the first time through. It was my second read through that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. They made it blatantly apparent that he was lying right in that piece with the message to Lazarus. And he can't tell his team because of the fact that it was a secret. And he doesn't know, is it on or is it off? And if he reveals it to the team now, he's actually broken the original deal. So He's in a catch-22 at this moment. He's lying, but it goes back to the thing, is it right to lie for the right reasons? In this case, I side with him because he really is trying to protect them by keeping the secret that he is. So that bit is very interesting. Not knowing where this whole thing was going to go with Wally right away at first was pretty awesome. With the kidnapping and everything, and seeing that, the history. I really loved how that whole bit played out.
Yeah, and again, you knew it was Deathstroke going into this whole thing just because this was the Deathstroke crossover.
Sure. So
there was no surprise in there, but I did like how they played it out and how they stretched it out. And and that part of me was part of the coolness of the torture on the treadmill. Where he's making him talk and he's, making him run. And it was all part of, all of that was needed for the torture. All that was needed to get the information out. And I really, again, this right here, these scenes with Deathstroke, it shows the nastiness that he has, but it also, the fact that, he was sitting there in his mind, he's doing the right thing. His mind, he's doing the right thing. He's trying to bring back his son. He's trying to, do what's right by his family. He's going about it horribly wrong ways, but that's the weirdness of Deathstroke, where you're like, you want to root for the guy and you want to you feel bad for him, and you're like, hey, maybe he could be a good guy. Especially, I love the fact that the deal he threw out. Hey, you help me get my son back, I'm done. I'm done being Deathstroke. I 100% believed him that if Wally had said, yes, I will help you, and they were successful in saving Ravager together, I 100% believe Deathstroke would have quit the gig and he would have been done. And I think that's the interesting thing, that you have this person who is a nasty villain, but you can sit there and say, he probably would do it. And I think that is the great, that's the cool factor for Deathstroke for me.
I do and I don't. I believe that he would have done everything he could to honor that, because he's a man of a code. So I do believe that. And he's the original anti-hero, right? One of them, I should say. He comes from that anti-hero era where they became really popular and cool. That's how he got his own series from the get-go. He became one of those ones that was you loved to kind of follow, during the whole era of the Punisher and things like that, rising up. He's a great character, and what's compelling about him is everything that you're saying. I do believe he would do everything in his power to honor that promise. The problem is, what happens when everybody who's his enemy comes attacking? And I don't mean just attacking him, attacking his family and things like that. That would cause him to make adjustments. It's an interesting story with Deathstroke, because I do believe him. I'm with you. Yeah. So this isn't me even disputing what you said. It's more adding to it and saying that it would be compelling to follow this timeline. You remember the old series What If from Marvel?
Yeah.
I would love to see a what if of this. What if Wally had helped Deathstroke? Just flat out helped him. And what would have happened? Because I think there's a story to be told there that I think would be really fun to read.
And also add to it, okay, so he successfully brings back Ravager. Ravager never made the promise. He never made any type of deal.
Sure.
So Ravager starts becoming a killing machine, and Deathstroke's like, hey, I'm not killing. I'm not taking the contracts. I'm helping my son do it, but I'm not taking the contracts. And I could see him doing something like that. Or as you said, what if the villains start coming after him? Is he going to honor the no-kill agreement, or is he going to say, I didn't take a contract. I never said I wouldn't defend myself. So anybody comes after him, he's dropping him. But he's not taking any Deathstroke contracts. And I think, again, like you, I think that would be a cool story to tell. But it's funny because this story arc leads into some cool stuff going forward with Deathstroke, that so we have a cool story that's going to come out of this, but then we have all these different spin-offs and variations that could go, and I think that's kind of the neat thing of a well-told story, in that as you're reading it, you're seeing, okay, what about this? What about that? What about this? And this story has it in just in gangbusters.
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's a great story for what it does and what it delivers. And there's so many ways that it could have headed in different directions that I really loved it about it. I really found myself drawn in. How is this going to resolve itself? Where is it going to go with all of these characters? What is the status quo going to be like? And that part I really enjoyed, along with the mystery of Dick Grayson and what he knew. Because the first time reading this through, you start to realize that Dick Grayson knew something, and he actually did know something. And Lilith was right. And I was like, oh, man, Lilith's right on this one. And Dick Grayson's one of the characters I grew up with as a kid. I always side with Dick Grayson on this one. I'm like, well, this dude had to have a reason. I'm siding. Sorry, Omen. He probably did something. He may have even goofed. But I'm riding with my buddy on this one. It added another layer to this story, to wonder what would have possibly have driven him. And I'm glad they didn't deliver that right away. They didn't do the flashback that told us right away. That was something they delivered later in the story, which I thought was a smart move, because it added more of a sense of mystery to this that I really enjoyed. The mystery part of this was really well drawn out in this series.
Oh God, yeah, and it's funny, and it's mystery, but it's again, we knew Dick had lied. We knew he had made a deal with Deathstroke. We didn't know the backstory behind it. We didn't know what the actual deal was. And I think that's kind of a sign of a great story, when they can tell you the ending, but it still makes you, chomp at the bit for how it came about. Like I throw out the Death of Superman storyline. The story was called Death of Superman. We knew Superman was going to die by Doomsday. We knew that going into reading it, but I was so compelled into reading it that the actual process of how's it going to happen, what's going on, oh my God, I didn't see that one, that's awesome. There was so many of those moments that's the sign of an epic story, that you can give the ending and then still have people wanting to read what was going to happen. In this, we have a lot of big ending pieces right from the beginning, but it doesn't take away the process of finding out the full details. Now we know the rest of the story, and I absolutely loved how this played out. Especially, you go through these great torture moments, you go through these great interrogation moments, these great Deathstroke and Wally moments to lead to the ending of it with, Wally's not the only Flash that he has in custody. I love seeing the other Wally going, hey, what's going on here?
And that part was great because it finally came to a head and you finally started to see these characters put in the same situation together. And that part I really enjoyed. I enjoyed finally seeing these pieces. Sometimes you can deliver things too quickly and they don't have as much meaning. This is a great example of a situation where they did not do that at all. They delivered these things and in such a way where, by now we know Wally more. The newer Wally I'm talking about. And to me, it mattered a lot more getting to know him now, getting to see him finally meet with the other Wally, because we knew that Wally West, when he first encountered Barry when he came back, did not want to drop into this life and shake things up for this kid, who is his cousin, and that's a piece that can be gradually delivered later. I really like that, and they left that open as part of this story as well. Yeah. There's more to be done later with these characters that I find really, I can't wait till the next crossover with them. What is that going to look like? What kind of questions these two have? When are we going to see them together again? I can't wait, because this story just added another layer to it. So it's interesting, as we're looking at this story, one of the things that I really enjoy is Wally's been through, and Barry, so much time travel. They know the dangers of time travel. That would be the great thrill, I think, of being a speedster. And I always enjoy that about the Flash because I love a big Doctor Who fan. We grew up as kids loving things like Voyagers. I always loved time travel stories and anything. I was even going back to things like Star Trek with like the episode A Piece of the Action. The original Star Trek series. I've always loved that stuff where there's been historical pieces where characters have gone in the past and you get to see them interacting in things that we know are history. In the case of comics, it's always great to see characters go back in time and be able to see history from a different perspective and maybe see things that we didn't see before. But also, there would be this sense of, imagine if I was like looking back, like, what if I could go back to my childhood and make like changes? And you think that those changes would help you, right? Yep. But think of how much they'd negate if you didn't go through certain experiences. Because each experience that you had in your life is like a domino effect, right? They led to things that made you who you are now, good and bad. So where do you make the cuts? Where do you change things? What is too little? What is too much? And there's a lot of danger in that power. And seeing Wally's panic over Deathstroke, you don't understand what you're doing. But Deathstroke being like, you're like a mere child compared to me in this one. Looking at his own intellect. He's like, you don't understand what you could do with your power. And what it could, and he's like really rationalized for himself that he's really the right man to have control of the Speed Force, to be able to make these decisions, to handle this type of thing. He could bring back his son, and he's asking Wally for his help. You're a hero. Be a hero. Save lives. You can save a life here. I'm letting you do it. So it's that whole argument is compelling, because I see where Deathstroke's coming from. I know he's horribly misguided, because I know from the Flash, being such a big Flash fan, I know from the Flash history, Deathstroke's off on this one. He's not right. But you get where he's coming from, and he's really trying to reason with Wally. And I honestly believe you were talking to Deathstroke, he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to reason with him, because I'm hoping he'll help. Because honestly, for me, it's the path of least resistance. Good for him. It's good for me. Win-win. He helps me out. We save my kid. If we can do that with the least amount of harm to anybody, I'm all for it. So you look at that and you kind of go, ooh, what's right and wrong here? And how many of us wouldn't go back in time to try and save somebody they've lost? It just goes to say, is that really the right thing to do? Or just sometimes things just need to happen? It would be an interesting ability to have, because I know people who I thought have died too young. I had a friend of mine who died in his 20s. Well, would I want to go back through time and somehow find a way to help him so that doesn't happen to him? Yeah, that's short, right? But
go ahead, yeah.
then there's that moral piece of what things have happened to others, though, because that event happened, and how would their lives change? Would they be better or worse? So you come back to present day, and somebody else's life is now horribly destroyed because you altered that event. It's where comic stories become an interesting debate. I mean, we could have a whole dinner time discussion revolving around what would you do?
Yeah.
Who are the ones, what would you look back in time and go, if I could change one event, what would it be? What would that mean? Here's the thing, trying to even flowchart what that may mean. Would great good come from it or great harm to everybody else involved in that end? I don't know. That's where these stories get very heady, and I loved this. I loved that when I was reading this issue, I'm like, I understand both sides of this debate, and I love it because it's rich. It's a very smart debate. That I think the moral debate of it takes place off the page, not on the page. It's when you start really thinking it through and saying, well, what if it was me? What would I do with this? And would it be the right thing? And what could it mean for others? That's where this turns into a very, very heady piece that ends with the part where the two of them are face to face. What a great kickoff issue. Because I really realized just how much content was on issue 1 of this particular series before we even had the two Wally Wests see each other for the first time.
Yeah, man. The two powers I would never want to have are Superman's hearing and the Flash's speed, because I wouldn't want to be tempted to be able to do the time travel, and I wouldn't want Superman's hearing that I could hear the troubles of the world. I think that would drive me nuts. Just hearing everybody cry for help and not be able to help them, and have this ability, this temptation to be able to go back in the past and change stuff and know that you shouldn't do it, but there is still that temptation. There is still that moment. It's one of the things I liked about the Flash TV show where, that Barry knew he shouldn't go in the past, he shouldn't change stuff, but his grief just got to him, and he's like, I got to do this. And he went back and did it, and it caused his whole life to turn upside down. And you see, it's a really cool just debate and geek concept of, what would you do? Should you do it? Why shouldn't you do it? Type of thing. And again, as you said, that first kickoff issue was absolutely, it set the tone for why this is such a great crossover piece, because it came out hitting with a hammer, and I was very excited. And I jumped right from that into the Teen Titans issue, just excited and going, oh God, part 2, let's go, rock and roll.
Yeah, I always debate if I could go back in time and just see, because I love history. I mean, I love the idea that you could actually be there and see events unfold. So there is something tempting about the Flash's power. But to your point is, what if he went back and saw an atrocity? I like to think that I'm a pretty morally centered person. I don't think I'd watch horrible things happen to people and not try to help. I would like to think. So then it becomes, to your point, is that should anybody ever have that power?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because you just can't, I don't know how you can become emotionally detached to real things happening and unfolding in front of you. There's been, for as many great moments in history as there are, there's so many horrid events that have happened in human history. To be able to make one of them better would be a temptation that I don't know how you wouldn't at some point go, what if I just tweak this? Just this little bit, like, a baby dying or something like that. Could, how could that hurt anybody, right?
Yeah.
The horrible harm it'll do to that mother or something like that, or that father who lost their child. What if we save just that baby? What if that baby grows up to be this horrid person? You know what I mean? Or what if that event, that baby's death, led to those two people leading some form of movement for change that had a positive impact? The temptation would be so great. I love these stories. I mean, this is comics, for people who dismiss them as being fluff pieces. You read this kind of stuff and really start talking it out. These are the kind of geeky discussions, right, that we as comic fans are always accused of having. They're right. Because they're smart. Because they're smart. This is what good science fiction does, right? It makes you question our moral existence and what it's like. And this stuff's really fun. I liked how the Teen Titans issue opened up with a little bit more exploration of the other Wally West. Because he's a character I do still feel like I want to get to know. And seeing how he met Deathstroke prior to this situation and what led to eventually his capture by Deathstroke, I thought was really well achieved in this storyline. I liked how that all played out. I like that Aqualad, Jackson Hyde, has not been given a code name yet. Yes. I like that, he is a character, somebody we're just getting to know. I like that he's being introduced into Rebirth. He's a character, you and I both have talked about this, that he's a character, I was kind of puzzled that he wasn't introduced sooner. But then reading the Aquaman titles, I'm like, where would you put him in? I don't know where he would have fit because so much of it's been exploring Arthur and Mira. And I think it's important that they've been explored the way that they have. So he's a character that really hasn't had an opening to be a part of this until now. And now I'm glad he's back because he really fits this team. And this team is really becoming one that I'm greatly starting to enjoy. Teen Titans has become a must-read title now for me. And I got to say, it's one that I'm like, why? How did I let this get backlogged? I got to jump right back on board like you and get caught up reading because in this arc, seeing the whole team's interaction, there's something empowering kind of seeing them. Okay, they've been around for a little bit now. Look at their interactions with each other. I want to see more.
For me, when I was reading this, a couple stuff on there, like, because I love Damien. He's my little monster. But just seeing the little tweaks to his costume change that you can tell were inspired by Ra's al Ghul. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then referencing, again, editor's note, referencing to his cousin, Mara al Ghul. I'm like, wait, what? Cousin? Oh, I gotta get caught up. What did I miss? What did I miss with Damien? So this was one of those. Just again, I love his quote unquote air quotes around leadership style that he has because this is Damien done well. But also he does have some cool interactions with his team. He does have some kind of neat moments, like you with Aqualad. I like the fact he doesn't have his code name yet. It's coming. I don't know when, but he's going to come down the line. But I also do like how Damien's kind of being dismissive of him. On one hand, part of me hopes it's Damien trying to get Jackson to step up the game and say, hey, dude, I'm part of this team. And part of me thinks it's just Damien being Damien. So I don't know which it is with him because that's the neat thing about Damien, where on one hand you're thinking, is he really just this person, or is there something beyond that? Or is there a level of, is there something else that he's planning, he's got going on? Is there heck, might as well. Is there a strategy behind his being a jerk, or is he just being a jerk? And I love the fact that, with Damien, you have those moments where you have those thoughts in your head. Is he just being Damien, or is there something more to it?
With him, I think some of it is just him being Damien, but then he pulls back. You start to see that he cares more about these people than he lets on. I think some of it is so he doesn't show that he cares.
Right.
Because Damien doesn't like showing his emotions. So I think sometimes he goes out of his way to be a putz to make that image of, I don't care about these people. But then we see in this storyline so many times where he clearly does. And it makes him an interesting and good leader. I really like the duality of Damien. That there's what's on the surface is not what's underneath. And I think we see it here. We see it in Super Sons. He's a character who I can't get enough of. I think he's really just been a well-created character. I'm glad that they didn't all of a sudden make him this nice, happy-go-lucky kid. He has issues. And I think there's something freeing about following a hero who deep down is a hero. He does have vulnerabilities. He does have these emotional attachments. But at the same time, he is clearly a hero, too. Yeah. I mean, in all these pieces. He can be the little monster that you're talking about. And that hasn't gone away. It's part of his charm in a strange sort of way. His interactions with Superboy and Super Sons have been phenomenal. And they carry over into this particular series. He's a character who I'm glad that they don't have him in the main Bat titles right now. I'm glad that he's over here, and he's also appearing in Super Sons. And I like that that's where we're really seeing the interactions with this character because he's fitting there.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. And it's, again, one of the things this issue continued on some of the coolness that we got in the last issue, where it's not just focused on just Teen Titans. Each of these 3 issues has Teen Titans and Deathstroke and Titans stories parts being told throughout it. Now, there's a focus. Like, for example, in the Titans, it was Deathstroke and Wally. This one, it's Deathstroke and Kid Flash. So you've got, where they're making sure a Teen Titans character is the focus, but they're not ignoring the other stuff, and they're not ignoring the other characters. And again, that was a really great usage of this crossover and making this more of one story, one event being told.
So we see the two Wallies interacting with each other. We get to see the situation where Wally's trying to keep the other Wally, older Wally's trying to keep the younger Wally calm, saying, I know I should have told you about all this, but, it is like too little too late at this point because there's no trust between the two of them. They don't have that relationship. So him saying, don't trust Deathstroke isn't enough at this point. And we see that Wally right now is longing for some truth. And what he's finding out now is that Barry lied to him. So now we've got the situation where Barry's lied to him. His team, there's some issues there. They haven't quite, they aren't seasoned yet. So the friendships there aren't as strong as older Wally's would be with the Titans. I really liked the humanity of seeing the younger Wally West in this. It's an interesting sort of piece. And I give them credit for when they brought Wally back. The easy thing would have been bringing Wally back changed something. So now this Wally has a different name. Well, I'm glad they didn't do that. To me, I think this is far more compelling to say, this Wally's back. There is another Wally now who's his cousin. This is part of the change. Time heals itself, which from a lot of the time travel shows that I've watched, that's an overarching concept, that when things don't make sense, time will tell a story that makes it make sense for you. That's what they've done here with this. And I love that. It's a heady concept that's been brought in. Time healed itself. You can't have two Wallys without a reason why there's two Wallys. Well, they're cousins. And obviously they're cousins, and it's not that crazy of a concept. And it's an interesting sort of piece that we as fans know was done for the purpose of time healing itself. And I'm going to be very curious to see. I can't wait till there's a Dr. Manhattan Superman miniseries that's coming up. I'm hoping that gives us more backstory into what's actually happened here.
Yeah.
To the DC universe, because that mystery is something that's in our face subtly in all of these books as we go forward. This debate then with him and Deathstroke has a very different meaning because he doesn't have the history with Deathstroke that the older Wally does. And the things that are being brought to his forefront, he knows his dad is Reverse Flash. He knows that he was lied to about Barry. Now he's been lied to about there being another Wally. When it comes to a moral piece, he's looking at the fact, well, I got these people who've been just blatantly flat out lying to me. Now we got this guy who just wants to save his kid. What's right and what's wrong here? His debate isn't compelling to me on this one. Because I could see in that situation going, well, this guy's flat out telling me his kid died and he wants to save him. That's all he wants to do is save his kid. That he's going to give up being a killer. So is that wrong? I don't know. I love that.
And the thing is, on paper, I could, say, just give, Kid Flash a smack in the head saying, what are you trusting this guy for? But the way the story's laid out, the way they did this, yes. Not only just this, but not just even the words, but the visual, just the mannerisms of Deathstroke. I love the fact that, he just zaps, Wally with, a couple thousand volts, knocking him unconscious, drops him right at the kid's feet. And then he's just very calmly talking to him and saying, hey, listen, my name's Slade Wilson. I don't lie. I never lie, Wally. And as he's doing this, he's unlocking him, releasing him, completely just, making it look like he's completely exposing himself and, weakening, putting himself in a weaker position without truly, looking weak. He's like, he's giving Wally his freedom, and the whole time he's just running that manipulation. I love just how this whole thing played out. Again, it shows the intelligence of Deathstroke, and it's funny because the underlining truth that the underlining lie, and air quotes around lie, by the way, that Deathstroke is telling is the truth. He is trying to save his son. He is trying to bring back and fix stuff with his family. He is trying to do that. Now he's telling Wally, hey, let me show you some stuff. That right there is the ruse to steal the powers, but there is still the underlining truth behind the lie. And that's the most dangerous type of lie you can tell is when it's, is it a lie by admission? And it's, he's not lying, but he technically is because he's really not being upfront and open and honest. There's a difference between lying and not being open and honest. And I love that kind of balance that Deathstroke has in these series. And looking at it, going through this and seeing it play out, you can kind of understand why a young hero would say, well, let me get all the facts before I just go into super punch mode and knock this guy out. Let me find out what the truth is here. And in the process of finding out the truth, he learns, well, you can't trust Deathstroke sometimes. And that for me was why I loved these Kid Flash Deathstroke moments.
What's interesting is Dick Grayson's conundrum. Damian and the team show up. His team is calling him out. Enough's enough. We need to know what's going on here, the reality. And Dick Grayson's up on the roof, and, the typical, they're ready to fight, right?
Yeah.
I was actually really glad that it led to this kind of posturing that normally leads to a battle between two teams, and they didn't. I was glad that they didn't. Don't get me wrong. I dig when they do this kind of stuff where, it leads to the fight because you want to see who would pair up with who and what that fight's going to be. I applauded this one for not going that route because of who these characters are. And for Dick Grayson being the one to say, Robin's right, I made a deal with Deathstroke. Trust me when I say I did it for you. And I know how to find our friends. So that whole piece, you're looking at that and going, all right, this is cool. I really liked that the story kept moving instead of leading to the traditional confrontation that happens. That was something that I thought was a really good piece. Then we go back to Wally and Deathstroke, who are continuing their debate over this story piece. Deathstroke now, we see the pieces where Deathstroke's now starting to steal the Speed Force, starting to take that into part of himself. I didn't realize that Deathstroke was going to become the Flash Deathstroke or the Speed. Yeah. And I really liked that that's where this story went because he's already a character that we know has so many mad skills. He thinks faster, his reaction time's faster, but now you're giving him the Speed Force on top of it. It makes him a more jacked up Deathstroke than we've ever seen before. And going against heroes such as Damian and Nightwing, who are such skilled fighters, really you need to add this other layer to it. And how does he combat the two Flashes? Well, this is how he combats it. I really like how this story opened up an opportunity to show us a Deathstroke who's even stronger.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny. I didn't see that coming, by the way. I didn't see him stealing the powers. And I love the fact that I didn't see that, even though it's very clearly written on the walls when you do your second and third read-throughs. You're like, oh, why did I see that? But I did love that panel where we find out exactly that he did steal it because it's Kid Flash saying, I'll help you. I've never used my powers like this before, but maybe together we can figure it out. And you kind of just, and I'm reading that going, you don't need to, kid. And right as he says, you already have. I'm like, oh, no, he stole the powers. And you see just the, oh, God, and the flash of lightning. And you don't get your confirmation until later in the issue. But, again, I absolutely loved that panel because it shows this kid thinking he's doing the right thing. He's like, he's being the hero. He's going to help. It'll end Deathstroke forever. This is a good thing. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'm doing the right thing here. And oh, no, I've been double-crossed. I keep laughing and chuckling at that scene just because this was such a perfect usage of this character, of Kid Flash, of Deathstroke, and even Wally in his incapacitated state, what he played into this whole storyline. This, for me, was just a pivotal moment that had me, kind of giggling just because of the fact that Deathstroke with superhuman speed, with him Flash speed, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting now.
Wally trying to be woken by Nightwing and by Damian. Wally, wake up, damn it. Should I slap him? I'd be happy to slap him. That stuff's just great. Such great, this is a great example of how you bring comedy into a story without it going slapstick. And it worked really well. I loved Flash Deathstroke's outfit with the Speed Force sword and the energy swirling around him, how it manifests. Clearly a great visual to show us what happened there. I couldn't wait for the next issue of Deathstroke because once I saw that piece, I'm like, oh man, this story it was already cool. It just kicked it up to 11 with that particular cliffhanger. This story had some really great cliffhangers with it in how it handled pieces like that.
Oh, God, yeah. Every one of these issues, really, as you said, kicked it up to 11, ramped it up for you, got you excited. And it's funny, I'm kind of glad I read these one after one after one, because if I would have had to wait any time between these, I would have hurt somebody. So the fact that I was able to go from part 1 to part 2 to part 3 to the final, okay, rock and roll. That was, again, I so want this thing collected.
I do too. This is one that I would gladly have collected. This is an example, though. I think I've been really guilty of this, where I feel like I've got to give people titles at the start. I think the editor's notes made me realize, no, I think if I gave this to a fan that might like any of these characters, I would give them this first and just say this is a great crossover with these characters. It's going to tell you certain backstories that you may want to follow. Like if you like Deathstroke and you want to see how he wound up blind, it tells you the issues to go pick up. Go ahead and grab those pieces, but you don't need to know that. You just need to know that at some point he was blinded through surgery. He's been fixed up now. So we know everything that we need to know here from this story because of it. This is a great example of give him this arc. It's a great arc. And it leads to the next issue, Deathstroke 19, where you start to see the run. And man, this is a great book. The race between him and Wally. I like that they don't feel the need to tell us every little bit before they drop us into the action. They're like, you know what? What's going to happen at this point? Obviously, they're going to try to stop him. That's going to lead to, of course, the first thing is the race between these two. The inevitable race that you really want to see. What is it going to be like with Deathstroke picking up his flowers for the first time and going up against Wally, who's more of a seasoned veteran between the two? I really enjoyed how that just opened up and led to the explanation of what the actual original deal was between Dick Grayson Robin and Deathstroke back in the day. I liked to see how that happened. This Lazarus contract that was created between the two.
Yeah, and again, going from the high action to this, inner dialogue between the two of them. This is a really cool pacing of the story because you open up with the big massive race that you're like, okay, yeah, this whole episode's going to be the race. No, it's not. That was just one piece of it. Let's go into the deal now. And if you can give me a story where you have these going from the action to the dialogue to action, and they just kept this nice flow through between the two of them, again, showing Deathstroke's character, because it's not just about the kill, it's not just about the contract. There's a little bit more to it. Now we're bringing in his daughter into the mix. Now we're showing that there's a little bit more to Deathstroke beyond just being the killing machine that he is. No, he's got his code, he's got his family, he's got his honor, and I like how seeing these different sides of Deathstroke throughout this. And again, it made sense why you would go to Robin. He was the right person to deal with this, and Dick taking this deal was good on his part. That was a good idea. This was a good deal for the Titans, and it's it's kind of hard to say that, but you got to look at the big picture. And I thought that for me was something I liked how this played out. I liked how everything that, we're getting right here in this story, and we're getting it in part 3 of this contract. We're getting what the actual contract was. And now it's completely making sense, the previous issues, why Dick Grayson didn't say anything. He couldn't say anything. He speaks, he breaks the contract, and that's it. It's open season on the Titans again. This for me was a really cool, pivotal kind of moment of, oh, this is nice, bringing it all together inside some really neat action sequences, setting up that are going to set up for the grand finale.
And that's the piece that I find very interesting is the grand, where is this going to build to? What is the grand finale going to be? I didn't know as I was reading it how many issues it was going to be. So I didn't know, was this going to be a shorter story, a longer story? I didn't realize it was culminating in an annual. So I wasn't aware what issue cycle this was on. And I didn't bother as I was reading it. I'm like, well, I'm backlogged. Let me just start reading these issues and just enjoying this story and following along. And I'll see where this thing carries me. Because I knew it was going into 3 books. So I didn't know if it was going to have 2 runs through 3 books. I'm glad they chose an annual to culminate this whole thing. And we'll talk about the annual when we get to it. But I felt like this story was given the space that it needed to be told really well, because if you're not bringing in the rest of Deathstroke's kids as a part of this, you're missing the boat. And I thought this story did a really good job of starting to bring them in to this story in a way that made sense. And they didn't feel like they were rushed into it. Now, Jericho in particular is what I'm talking about out of the characters in this. I thought Jericho's piece in this was really well handled.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because Jericho is a character that I'm not as comfortable with as all the other characters in this, in this story being told. I'm always, what does Jericho do? What can't he do? There's always a question to me as to what his power set is. And every time he comes in, I always feel like I'm behind the 8 ball on him, that I don't completely understand the character or know who he is. And this was, again, issue 19, this was a pretty cool issue that gave us a pretty good understanding of who Jericho is and getting us some nice groundwork. And some of the stuff that they talk about in this issue is making me really want to go back into the past Deathstroke issues and get caught up, because he's got some pretty cool, interesting interaction with his little sister that I kind of want to see the fight, just because I'm like, man, he kind of cracked her skull in a couple places. I want to know what happened there. So it's, again, cool introductions of these characters and interesting interactions, especially the Wally Deathstroke interactions in their race. I loved when, Deathstroke called them out on it, saying, hey, speed is your single advantage. Now you're facing someone who's as fast as you, who is a trained assassin. What do you want to do? And I loved seeing Wally run away. I loved it. And it was one of those shocking moments, but it was something that I was like, man, that is cool that he's not doing the typical the typical storyline where he'd try to fight him out and get his butt kicked or get possibly killed or something. He's regrouping. It's in a way, it's, some would say it's cowardly. Personally, I say it's smart. And I love the fact that he beats himself up over it. He beats himself up over the fear that he felt when he did run, but in the end, it was the right call to make. And I love the fact that what he did, and then the fact that there is consequences to himself about about him running. I thought this was a really cool, powerful moment, and again, it added on to the story that's going to be told later on.
Now, the piece that I really enjoyed was this piece with Damian after Wally lost his powers. Damian really was rough on him. And I know I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit on this piece, but I thought the interaction between the two was really interesting because Damian's leadership style really needs to evolve over time when he's with his team. Otherwise, you stand a risk of losing them. But some part of me thought Damian did some of this on purpose as a way to link Wally and Jackson together. Did he really forget Jackson, or did he deliberately leave the two of them together so that Jackson would care for Wally and they'd grow closer? I don't know. And that was the piece of the story that I really like. I can't wait for the next issue of Teen Titans after this story's over. I want to see more where this was going with these characters. This really hooked me into not just Deathstroke, not just the Titans, but really the Teen Titans and the dynamic that's currently going on with this team. I want to see more. And I feel there's more than the story that's being told here going on with these characters. And that part is really where the writing, I think, kicks it up a notch.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because that's the whole stuff with Damian where I'm like, is he being a jerk or is he laying it out to make them step up? And, because that's the thing. When you are a hero, when you do this, you have to have that confidence in who you are. You have to have the strut. Right now, Aqualad and Kid Flash both do not have that confidence. They both are shaken. And this is something where they got to stand up. And, Jackson's got to stand up and say, hey, I'm Aqualad, dang it. This is who I am. I'm part of this team, and don't you dare leave me behind again. He needs to give Damian a smack. Kid Flash needs to step up and say, no, I'm not off the team. I'm still on this team. Yeah, I messed up, and guess what? I'm going to mess up again, but you know what? I'm going to keep running because that's what a Flash does. A Flash always runs forward and keeps running. And that's, and part of me is hoping that's Damian's why he's doing this. But again, it may not be because Damian is that wonderful little monster sometimes. So it may not be Damian trying to motivate them. It may be Damian just being a jerk. And that's something we're not going to know until later on. We're not going to see that until, an issue or two down the line where maybe you'll get a little moment where Damian will have a little grin on his face or a little comment saying about time, or something like that lets you know, okay, this was Damian's plan all along. Or maybe we'll never get that moment. I don't know. And that's, I think, one of the neat stuff when you get a creator who understands the quirks of Damian, that you get these moments, and you get these moments where you're thinking, okay, what is it? Is it A or B, or is it column C that we haven't figured out yet? And again, I've got the pack-ups right here. I'm going to jump into this, reading this stuff, anticipating the next Titans issue just because I want to see what happens. This is, again, something a really good story does. It gets you jazzed up for, not only what you read, but what you're going to read next. And, this story arc did a great job with that.
Yeah, it does so much. Jericho being introduced into this story was something that I really enjoyed. I'm a big fan of Jericho from back in the day, and he's a character that I think they've been trying to figure out in recent years because he went bad, and then, in previous stories I'm talking about, and then I think they lost some of the magic of Jericho. I really love this modern telling of Jericho's story. Like, of course he'd be using a cell phone now as part of communication, and technology's opening up a whole different world from him. He's a character that, seeing his relationship with his dad and how the dad look down on him and those type of pieces with him, the limitations of his communication, but that his ability to take over other people is so interesting. I like that we got to see the backstory between Joseph and Grant and the father and, once again, the wife. All the pieces that we know from Deathstroke's history, again, being fleshed out just a little bit further in this story. Those are the pieces that I really, again, I know I've said this before, I appreciate. We seeing Wintergreen again as a part of this whole thing. I love flashbacks. I'm a big fan of these. I love flashbacks that aren't just done for the sake of doing a random flashback. These are ones that were really done for the whole entire purpose of expanding story, telling us more about a relationship, making us care about the strained relationship between Deathstroke and his son and what that piece looks like. It was really just a great piece. And him not knowing his son worshiping Deathstroke, but not knowing that Deathstroke all along was his father, I thought was a great piece of this.
Oh, God, yeah. And I love the 60 seconds. That little bit where they just show Deathstroke going on a killing spree.
Yes.
Clearing up all his old... and he cleared up his contracts. He even says, I'm clearing my calendar. Because he's got this plan to save his son, but he's still Deathstroke. He took the contract. He's got to complete the contract. And he's a killer, but he's got the code. So goes through, okay, 1 minute, done. Says his farewells to his daughter, which, again, it's always neat to see Deathstroke have those moments where, he can be maybe a concerned father, maybe is kind of, I don't know. He's one of those, you never truly understand how much of it is personal concern for his children, how much of it is personal, his personal arrogance, because that is something that Deathstroke has, one of his flaws are in. And we're seeing it in the fact that he's saying, I can handle the Speed Force. I can handle time travel. I'm better than you, Wally. I can do this. It won't be a problem. And him thinking that, going into this, thinking I could change time, not have it be an issue. It won't destroy the world or anything like that. Come on, I'm Deathstroke. I'm that good. So that arrogance that we see in a lot of villains, and we see in a lot of those characters that could possibly be a good person, but because of character flaws, they're not. And I think that's something, again, showing a little bit more of Deathstroke in, the weaknesses that Deathstroke has. I really digged these moments with him and really got me wanting to read more and, see more and understand who he is, and especially has me excited for the next, continuations of continuations of Deathstroke, from 20 on.
Yeah. That's a piece where sometimes big storylines and crossovers, if they're doing their job right, evolve characters, right? They set up a new status quo that make you go, wow, there's a lot of stories spinning out of this that you can really tell that's going to be compelling. Jericho's costume was something that I really enjoyed seeing in this piece. Seeing, how it works in this world and seeing, again, another example of a power set manifesting itself and kind of seeing what it looks like. No need for the mouth because he doesn't speak anyway.
Right.
I like it. Again, there's echoes of a link to his father in his costuming and how it's been developed. Which is something, and to Rose, obviously. Then we lead from that and that confrontation piece into this great piece where Deathstroke's trying to save his son. And that's where the conclusion, begins for this story. It's, I found you. That piece is just, it was a great ending, I thought, to this whole thing. Not knowing that it was going to end in an annual, which was something that I really enjoyed. Annuals, I think this is a great example. I like done-in-one annuals because that came up on a previous episode. I think it was a phone call we got from Russell where he was talking about sometimes it's great to have annuals as a singleton, powerful story. And I do agree with him on that. But then I do like this use of annuals where it's like, the concluding piece where, like, a regular issue is not enough. And if you split up the story that's being told here, you're going to miss some opportunities that you've got to fit in that cliffhanger, right? This didn't need that. It just, let's jump into the Teen Titans special, which was the Lazarus Contract finale. And I liked that they chose this route to go with it. Do it as a big oversized special, give us some extra page count, and give this story, which is really big and epic, the ending that it deserves and the character development along the way that it deserves. I like paying a little extra for an issue like this. I like the extra pages. I wanted this kind of ending for.
Oh, God, yeah. And one of the things that I'm wondering is Jericho and flying. I don't remember him being able to fly in the past.
I don't either.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I don't know where that comes from, and maybe that's something you and I missed in some of our reading. So I'd like to go back and see that piece. Actually, if anybody knows historically about that. I've got to admit, I didn't read every issue of Teen Titans, so I don't know if in the past at some point he gained that ability, or if there's some form of technology that's allowing him to do that. I remember Jericho just connecting, doing the whole contact piece, and he would go into somebody else, and that was his power. He would be on the playing field as really being able to be your stealth person that could help you out in the field in ways that you wouldn't normally expect by jumping from body to body.
Yeah, and I think it is a costume that gives him the flight powers. And I'm hoping that when I go back and get caught up on the Deathstroke stuff, I'll see that, and there'll be an explanation, because there's some epic stuff that happened prior to this in Deathstroke that I missed. I didn't read. So I gotta Deathstroke's one of the ones I gotta go back and get caught up on, and just to see if that's what it is. But yeah, that was something that it was something like that, but it didn't throw me off enough that I didn't enjoy anything. I absolutely loved the story, so I've got this mystery in the back of my head, but it's not taking away from the story, because as you said, this was a great layout, great ending in this Titans annual special Lazarus Contract that, again, really cool backstory, continuing the current story, laying out the groundwork for the next stories to come.
I like how the annual opened up with a little bit of the backstory for Grant and Hive and how they recruited him, which was something I don't remember either. And I want to go back to my previous Teen Titans issues and read some of the initial introductions to Ravager from that, Judas Contract and all that, and just see how much of the backstory they went into, because I don't remember any of this. If it's all new, I really give him credit for putting this piece in, because this made the character far more compelling to me than I ever remember him being. I thought in the past, I always felt like his son was kind of a hollow character that was clearly being used for the purpose of showing us why Deathstroke cares, not so much why he was important. You know what I mean? It was, okay, it's Deathstroke's kid, so Deathstroke's mad. Makes sense. It's a great motivation tool. But I don't remember caring much about Grant in any way, shape, or form, other than knowing that he was some kind of pawn. This really does a great job of not only getting to know him as a kid, but getting to know how he was manipulated. He's almost a character you have sympathy for, right? For what Hive did to him.
Yep. They took this kid at this vulnerable moment, manipulated everything about him, and then just dumped the body. The whole thing was a setup to get Deathstroke into Hive. And again, completely rooting for Deathstroke to win on this, because he just wants to save his son. And man, you want to help the guy and you want him to win, but he's a bad guy and you're like, he can't win.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier, though. Is he a bad guy or is he a good guy?
Right.
It's such a tough call, because I do root for Deathstroke in his book, and I think that's where anti-heroes as characters are interesting, right? Lobo, right now, I'm enjoying him on that Justice League of America book. I don't look at him as a hero. I look at him, again, as your anti-hero kind of piece, where these characters start to become fun when you mix them in with characters who are blatant good guys, because they have shades of gray to them that I think make a story more interesting, where you're like, there's times where I really agree with them. Or at least, I don't know if agree is the right word, I'm sympathetic towards him and to his plight and what he's doing. I don't know that I would do anything that I don't think I'd do anything that extreme, but I've never lost anybody in that manner, where, their life was snuffed out in front of me. So I don't know.
it's a tough call to make. Yeah, and I think that's one. As I said before, one of the reasons I wouldn't want to have Flash speed is because I wouldn't want to have that temptation. And the fact that Deathstroke keeps time and like, this one where they show take 3. He's done this multiple times, where every time he's trying to figure out the right way to get his son out of this life. He's trying to save his son before he goes and takes that contract, before everything. And I love how that he keeps trying, and it's that as I said, the arrogance of Deathstroke saying that I can do it. Yeah, it didn't work this time, but next time I'll fix it. You gotta just accept the fact that it ain't gonna work, man, and you gotta stop. But he never will. That's not in his nature.
Well,
that's not in his mindset.
What happens when he goes all the way back and it still doesn't work?
Right.
Then what do? Go forward again and try to undo your attempts, and then you start crossing over your own time stream in what you're doing. It becomes an interesting conundrum, because you're going to eventually encounter yourself if you keep going forward. You go back the other direction, you're going to cross over and encounter yourself. So what's that going to be like? It's an interesting sort of conundrum where time travel gets very heady, because these things are happening now. He's inserting himself into history and changing history with every single footprint he's leaving behind. So, and by knocking him out there, what did that change? That split second where he knocked him out, where was his son supposed to be in those moments? That didn't happen. So he's made alterations along the way that, yes, when he's younger, if he changes something when the kid's younger, that history won't matter. True, but what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't change? And those events, each one of those pivotal events where he's delayed him. Maybe he doesn't go to a party he was supposed to go to. Maybe he doesn't meet a friend that he was supposed to. Maybe he doesn't kill somebody that he was supposed to. Grant, I'm talking about. What things has Deathstroke altered already by just meddling the amount that he has in the other tries that you mentioned? That's an interesting part of this whole time travel thing that gets really, I think, incredibly interesting to me. I think one of the things that this did very well, because Beast Boy hadn't had a lot of dialogue, I like that at this point they decided this is a good point to have a Beast Boy moment, where he gets to add his 2 cents worth in and starts to have a spotlight. Because they did something with Raven earlier. I was glad to see that they started to spotlight different characters who maybe hadn't had the opportunity to have a dialogue or a piece in there. Because otherwise they start to become background characters, and all of these characters need to have at least some form of foreground moment to make us feel like they're part of a team and they gel. It's natural that there would be certain people that are, because they're more intimately involved, that would have those sequences, but I was really glad to see the way that this played out, so that we got to see different characters spotlighted in certain sequences, even if it was just a short dialogue moment, but that dialogue reminding us that this character has value and importance to the story because they're a part of it. And they're going to have their own thoughts and 2 cents worth on what's going on with it. So I thought the piece in there where he was stepping in and having some conversation during the whole bit where Robin was trying to leave Kid Flash out, I thought was really great.
And I like the Beast Boy's point about, hey, maybe we should call for backup. Maybe we should bring the Justice League into this. That for me was a really good moment and a really good idea. But also, it does make sense in a way why they're not bringing him in, because how much time it would take to get the Justice League in, how much time it would take to get the Justice League up to speed and everything. They're right now on the front line and they got to keep moving and going. But I personally would have liked to see them do a call out saying, hey, this is what we're facing with. We're dealing with it, but, you guys got to know about it, or here's a heads up for in case, we're first line of defense, we need a backup, and you guys are the backup in case we can't get a handle on this, So it was funny because I like that moment, just because, as you said, it's good to see Beast Boy in there, good to see him throwing out some actual honest and good ideas. But it does add to the whole, this is their team dynamic, and I like how throughout this issue, we're going to see a couple times when the heroes aren't acting very heroic, and they're not acting completely like the good guys, and they're getting called out on it by some of these younger heroes. Especially there's a couple times where some of the Titans are cheering for stuff that they shouldn't be too happy about, and one of the Teen Titans calls them on it. And I like that, seeing the fact that these Teen Titans have the strength of their own personal conviction to stand up to these older heroes. Again, it further adds my hope that that's what they're doing. That's what Damian's doing with Kid Flash and and with Jackson.
I'm with you on the complete justification as far as why they didn't contact the Justice League. It was a time factor. I'm glad they didn't, because here's the problem: you paint yourself into a corner storyline wise. If they contacted them, that means at some point you have to see somebody from the Justice League show up, and this story didn't need that. I liked the discussion of it. I liked that Beast Boy brought it up, and I liked there was justification as far as why they don't. And I think that was more than enough for me to carry on. Let's go forward at this point. That's why they're not, these people have enough links to the Justice League. They're still not contacting them, and I totally get why, and there's a storytelling reason for them not to do it. That worked really well. This story just does so much. The Jackson and Kid Flash moments I thought were really great. Start building a friendship between the two of them that I want to see continue on later as the story continues. There's so much that was going on. And then we got to see the whole time travel piece, which I thought was interesting as well. What Damian did to Wally, we have to talk about that, right?
Yes, we got to get into that right now. But one quick point that it was something that just kind of clicked.
Okay.
And it was seeing because I seen the issue, read the issue multiple times. It's something that you said has really made it click, and I'm hoping that this is why they did this. Why Damian did this. Seeing Jackson and Kid Flash together. Where Wally's reaching out to Barry and he gets the voicemail and he's asking for help, and seeing the two of them together actually side by side. Part of me is really hoping this leads to a realization that actually Damian did this on purpose, leaving them behind just so they both would step up. You know what I'm saying? It's that Lost Boys part where it's a really cool moment where Wally is kind of reaching out to Barry and asking for help, even though he's been kind of turning his back on Barry because of all the lies, and all the deception. So I'm hoping that, again, just rereading it again, just seeing the buddy cop between these two, between Aqualad and Kid Flash, has me thinking, really actually adds on to my thinking, this was all a Damian plan.
Yeah, it's the same thing you said earlier, and I agreed with you then, and that it's a possibility. I don't know. It has me, like you, it has me intrigued for future issues to see where this is going to go. So I don't know. I could see that definitely being the case. I'm with you. I kind of hope it is. We'll see what level it is. Like any possibility in a story, it could either happen or not happen, and I want to see what they're going to do. So they've got me interested, and that's really their hook, right? Isn't that the whole point? Get people interested enough that they want to follow along. They want to see where things are going to go. This story has me wanting to see where this is going to go.
I know. Yeah,
they've done a great job with this.
Okay, so the heart punch.
Yeah.
Again, one of Damian's one of his character flaws that he has is he thinks he knows everything. He thinks he's got the plan. He doesn't need anybody else. He is Damian Wayne. He is trained by Ra's al Ghul. He is all these different accolades that he has, and he thinks, I know exactly what needs to be done. So let me just take care of it. Bam, hard punch, kill him. He only has to be dead for a couple seconds. Like, oh my God, Damian, what are you thinking? It was one of those things where right as he did it, I'm like, oh my God, what is the little monster doing now?
That's the piece that I find really interesting in this whole thing was the fact that, he did that piece. And I guess I took it that was going to be a done, like he did that and everything was going to be just fine. I had no idea that it would lead to a pacemaker for Wally in the future. It's like, whoa. Well,
and the thing that cracks me up is, again, it fits Damian that he would come up with this plan and think this is the best plan and not run it by anybody else because he doesn't need to, because it is the best plan because it's his. But the simple little thing that he didn't think about was the fact that by hitting Wally in the past, he's killing Wally in the present, which is their timeline connection. Wally is you're separating you're doing a ripple in the timeline to break Deathstroke, but you're also risking yourself because they're in the past because of Wally. So if Wally doesn't exist, guess what? You're now trapped in the past.
Yeah. It's an interesting sort of
little conundrum that I don't think Damian looked at, because that's the thing with Damian. If he comes up with a great master plan, he doesn't look at beyond outside of his master plan what could be other consequences. And also, I love the fact that after he does his stone palm technique, he just starts throwing flashbangs to keep the other Titans off of him. I'm like, man, Damian, what are you doing, dude?
But he's Damian. Well, and he has to, the flashbangs and all that really are to keep from hurting anybody. So I don't, he didn't intend on killing Wally or anything like that, but he obviously wasn't accounting on the after effects. Or would he justify the after effects as being, he's not dead? Yeah, it's an interesting sort of piece off of this that there's a future story to be told here from all of this, right?
Oh, God, yeah. I want to see the reckoning between Damian and the Titans, saying, guess what? Because of what you did, he now has a pacemaker. I want to see that reckoning, and I want to see, that, play out, and how Damian handles it. Because on the surface, he will say ends justify the means, and he will flat out say that to their face, and he will stick to his guns. But then the moments in private, how does he handle it? And that's the stuff I want to see, because you confront him, come at him head on, he's going to stand his ground and say, I was right. He'll never publicly admit that he was wrong. But you'll have those private moments. You'll have those moments with the people that he trusts that will allow this, that maybe we'll see whether he goes, maybe it wasn't the best idea, or maybe he'll feel bad. And those are the stories I want to read. That's where I want to see where this goes to.
Yeah, so much here that is leading to things beyond. The funny part is I kept wanting to know more about more characters throughout this story and what was happening with each of them as the storyline was going on. This such a powerful story in what's happening here. Jericho is another character who I love seeing him finally start jumping into bodies, and how that just kind of leaves him in a catatonic sort of state, where he's just sitting there. Even Damian kind of snapping in front of him, Jericho, hello in there.
Hello.
Anybody home? It wound up being a great showcase for characters that made sense. The battle on this one was something that felt desperate. I think that's a key. You have Wally and both Wallies and Deathstroke trying to be pulled out of the time stream, and all for the purpose of stopping this particular battle, and ending and culminating with this piece that I didn't really expect. The ending where Deathstroke's like, you know what? You kids have cost me everything. There, inside the Speed Force, I've seen things no man will ever see. Things no man should ever see. Awareness on multiple planes all at once. And now it's gone. My higher consciousness, making it difficult to be in tune with the Speed Force. So he's, lost any opportunity to do this again, and really just ending Deathstroke at that point. So it leads to this open ending of, where does Deathstroke go from here?
Now, before that, the one thing I do want to talk about.
Sure, go ahead.
And I loved how at the ending, after we have this great epic battle where, Damian does what he does, and it does disrupt the time spear, and everything, is back to quote unquote normal. But Deathstroke still has his powers, and he jumps into the Speed Force, and the quote unquote heroes are like, hey, we won. It's over. Chalk one up for the good guys, And even Damian's like, hey, more like, thank you, Robin, wants to take credit for all this. And it's the young hero Kid Flash who's saying, what are you kidding? A man's dead, and we're celebrating. How can we call ourselves heroes? And, again, like the Flash, they run forward. And the kid's not really thinking. He runs into the Speed Force. And then Wally's like, hey, I got to pull, and it's the whole team pulling him back. But I love the fact that it was Kid Flash calling out these more experienced heroes, saying this is not what a hero should do. We should not be glad that a guy is dead. And I loved seeing that in this character. And again, that's the kind of, stuff I want to see more where this goes for Kid Flash. I want to see, him be a stronger hero. He's starting to understand, what Barry went through. He's starting to have more experiences. I want to see him and Barry interacting, seeing how these events have changed him and his perspective, towards what Barry did. There's so much that happened out of this that I was like, man, that is really cool.
Now, Kid Flash's justification in the aftermath where he's like, I didn't listen to you. I made a choice, and it was the right choice. And really kind of basically saying, Damian, you're not the full and utter boss of us. This, I can't wait for Titans number 9. I want to read that just to see what the aftermath of this is. And will they stand behind Damian? Will they stand behind Kid Flash? What will that look like?
Yeah, Damian's got to watch it, because he could have a full-on coup on his hands. They can all say, no, he's gone, I'm gone. And you can kind of see that look in some of their faces when he tells them you're fired. So that, I think, again, that's something, was it Teen Titans number 9, where that continues. Has me excited. I want to continue reading that. I want to see how the little monster handles this.
Now, the Titans finale led to the justification not the justification, but the realization that Wally has been affected by this. His timeline changed yet again because of events in the past and this pacemaker. It does. I did read the next Titans issue, and did you? I don't know if you had a chance to read it, did you?
I haven't had a chance to, no.
So I won't spoil it, but I will say that this got me very interested in seeing that and the character dynamics that spin out of this whole piece. But you did read Deathstroke number 20, and I would like to talk about that one, because that's actually billed as the aftermath of this particular series. So we really should talk about this, because the epilogue really leads to a new status quo for this man who's like, okay, it shows more of his history again with Wintergreen, what these two had been through, that I really enjoyed. It shows the costume that was Jericho's, and this is actually our answer. Dr. Icon's costume.
Right.
That's what Jericho's wearing, isn't it?
No, that's I thought that was the Speed Force, the Deathstroke Speed Force costume.
No, Jericho's costume that he's wearing. Dr. Icon, defender of Windsor, Ontario. Didn't you see that?
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, you're right.
Isn't that Jericho's costume?
Yes, it is, but minus the cape.
Right. So I want to know more. I don't know if there's backstory that tells us more about where Jericho got this. This is where I want to fill in the blanks. I think there's some issues that I need to read to get caught up on that piece.
All right. Yeah, I completely missed the costume there.
Yeah.
That is completely Jericho's costume. So cool.
This science experiment bit that goes on with this where, okay, so Deathstroke was given the super soldier serum, right? And, became something more was manufactured to be something more. Who wouldn't want to take his blood? I get it, scientifically. Why wouldn't you want to create more like that? Or maybe go beyond that? Isn't that like a scientific curiosity? Can we replicate this? And there's always the piece of what positive medical implications it would have, but then there's the other piece of what weapons can we, which is where it always goes, right? Because weapons are a commodity. What weapons can we make out of this whole thing? And we get to see various variations that have gone wrong with Deathstroke's DNA being used with others. We almost see like a Solomon Grundy-like creature being created from this whole thing.
Which I'm assuming is going to be the next villain in this story arc.
Sure.
Because that's how I'm reading it, that's where this is going to go. This guy he's out for blood, and he's out for Deathstroke's blood, and he's got a personal vendetta against, Deathstroke on top of just everything else, not just the mutation, but the fact that he and, everything that happened with him and Joseph.
So the interesting piece with Deathstroke in reading this one is, his renouncing evil. He saw things in the Speed Force that can change a man. I think his definition of renouncing evil is pretty clear. I've had an experience. It's not like he's found Christ or anything like that. I liked that piece when that was all going on. But it does add... I really like how this story added another layer to the Speed Force as being this... almost godlike manifestation, because that does go back to Mark Waid's run of The Flash, where the Speed Force was almost this higher power that you could see a part of. I can't wait to see more of what this really means.
Right. Well, one of the things that cracked me up was the biblical references.
Yeah. And
just his usage of it. Especially with Tanya, where he's just completely throwing it at her, saying, "Hey, you're the one who goes to the church. These are your rules, not mine. And you got to repay. You got to be forgiveness for the sinner. You got to, show the. And it was just, I loved how he played. And it's, again, is this a game? Did Deathstroke actually have an epiphany, or is this You never really completely tell with Deathstroke. And that's what makes him such a cool character, in that he may be on the up and up. He may be renouncing, his evil ways, and he may be a new type of hero, or this could be completely him playing them. I don't know yet. And that's my excitement for 21 and beyond. Because I want to see, is this real? Is this a story? Is this a little bit of, is it column A, column B, or is it something that we haven't seen yet? What is the deal with Deathstroke, with Slade Wilson?
Yeah, that becomes the piece that has become interesting in this. We've changed his status quo. It's not the first time that his status quo has been changed. That's something that I really found interesting in all this. Was, we're going again, we're changing his status quo, and giving him an evolution that I'm finding interesting in this. I do want to see more about where this finally goes for this character.
Now, with Rose, and again, I love the character, so I want to see where she's going to play out in this. How is this going to handle for her, her brother, her father? What's going to be the family like? What's the jive going to be within them? And I think that's going to add to an interesting dynamic of the three of them on one team together.
Yeah, that's going to be the piece. You're right. What is this going to be like for the three of them on a team together? And what does that dynamic look like? These are characters who we both know and love. I can't wait to see where things go with Rose and Jericho and Tanya. Tanya's great.
Well, it's interesting, her on the team, because everybody else on that team is family and or close enough that they could be called family. And then she's there. What's her connection to the Wilson family?
Obviously, she knows Deathstroke on some level, so I want to know what that looks like too, and where that relationship's going to build.
Yeah. It's got these. She has to be prior. Again, it has to be prior Deathstroke issues that we didn't read. And it's funny because I'm sitting there wondering who she is. So, and again, I got my backlog Deathstroke sitting right here. I'm going to start reading that along with the Titans and Teen Titans. Today is going to be a reading day, but I'm curious to see if she is part of the backstory that I haven't read yet.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's the piece too. And if not, some things, it's interesting enough to know that they have a history and to see it fleshed out as the story goes on. Because if there's not, these are blanks that'll be filled in along the way. What do you think about the concept of the Dark Titans, though, being these characters and seeing what they look like? I love this being a team. It's going to be interesting to see, is this going to be a team book and going forward? Or what role is this going to take in the ongoing nature of Deathstroke as a series? And I don't know. Yeah.
The concept of the Dark Titans, I absolutely love. I want to see what they do, who they are, what they stand for.
Sure.
Because I'm assuming this isn't just a group of contracted killers, because they've got non-killers on the team, but they do have some killers on the team. And I'm curious to see if Deathstroke is going to have an active hand in this, or is he on the sideline? Because this is going on in the Deathstroke title, so you would assume he's going to costume up. But this Deathstroke, is he done? Maybe is he going to have more of a leadership standoff role, and the Dark Titans are going to be the one who are in the field, or Wintergreen. Is he going to be a field agent, or is he going to be support? He can throw down still, but he is up there in years. So technically, he shouldn't be a field agent. He should be the guy who sits back and is the director, and Deathstroke should be in the field. But we don't know with his mindset where Deathstroke is at. And I think these are all kind of questions. I'm very excited to see what happens in 21 and plus, because I want to see what are we going to get. This was a great building issue for for this new team. I don't want to see the title change over to be called Dark Titans. I want it to continue as being Deathstroke title, but I do want to see the Dark Titans. I do want to see who they are, what they're about. I want to see what kind of missions they take on. Is this going to be kind of like the Outsiders, that we've seen, where they're taking the missions that the clean cut heroes can't take, or are they going to be something completely different? I don't know, and that unknown has me excited.
That has me excited too. That's a piece that I really enjoy about this, is when you start to see characters that you're like, okay, these are characters that haven't been in the universe. There's some room to really play around with them. That piece is, I find this really interesting, and I can't wait to see where this series winds up going from it. I love the team dynamic at the end. I love there's a reason for Deathstroke to be doing this now. The man's previously worked alone. Now he's, is he trying to set them on the right path? And how hard is that going to be considering, make sure that they don't wind up making the mistakes that he did? Protecting his kids, at the same time. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what his role is on this. Is he their behind-the-scenes guy, their manager, so to speak? I don't know. I'm really excited for this. That was a great issue, and I think that one needed to be an epilogue because when you think about it, it really set up at the end a new status quo versus being a high-action issue. But I think it really set up also some puzzle pieces as far as where his current relationship's like. I liked seeing how Jericho goes along with things. Which shows that there's been some sort of an epiphany with these two, some sort of conversation that's happened that I'd like to know more about. Obviously I get it that it's his dad, but, when you can't go through Lazarus Contract, come out the other side and not have had some kind of conversation that led them to where they were at. And those are pieces that I want to see.
Holy caffeine!
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. They will be returning next episode. We actually have some voicemails that are queued up. They're going to be on there. But remember, that's our 500th episode. So if you want to call in with anything relating to the 500th show, we'll be recording that sometime next week. So be sure to call in and join us for part of that episode. Obviously, those won't be limited to just that episode. If you call in after we record, we will put them on subsequent episodes afterwards. But that show voicemail line number is 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. It is a Skype voicemail, so it doesn't have any kind of indicator anymore. They took out the voicemail message. I missed that. But it does. We do get all those messages, and we do put them all on the show, so please feel free to join us. We will accept, if you want to email me something for the 500th episode, it's ragingbullets@icloud.com. Feel free to send me an email there. We do have still the ragingbullets@gmail.com for those of you that used to send to that one. That forwards actually to that one. If you could, please put in the subject line 500th episode, and I'll be, this is for any kind of audio submissions that you might have, any kind of visual submissions. People send us all kinds of cool stuff usually when we get to our anniversary shows. So that's anything that you might want to incorporate into the episode in some capacity, please send them to that ragingbullets@icloud.com address, and we'll be sure to include it in the episode. Remember, subject line 500th episode would be very helpful just for me to be able to disseminate it from a lot of the emails that we get. But ragingbullets.com is our show website. That's where you're going to find news and information on the next episodes. That pumps out to Twitter and Facebook. We have a regular Facebook fan page. We have a Facebook group community that we're proud to be a part of. I know I shout out Jeremy and the team all the time. Jeremy, actually, I want to have him on the show sometime soon. We'd plan to have that before 500, and our schedule's been so crazy. It's not it's nothing on Jeremy's end. It's on our end. So, Jeremy, we will be having you on in the future on the podcast because I want to have you on to talk about the Facebook group community, also to share some of your favorite comics that you're currently reading. We'll do a nice episode segment and have Jeremy on as a guest. I wanted to have him on similar to I had Daryl Taylor on recently. I want to have Jeremy pop on the show for a guest spot, and we'll do something really cool with him sometime soon. So that's our Facebook group community. We've also got Google+. I'm on the PlayStation Network, Raging_Bullets. Feel free to add me on there. I'm on the Nintendo Network as Dr. Norge. I think the Miitomo app is the easiest way to add. I'm certainly willing to send people friend codes and stuff like that. If you want to email me at that Raging Bullets email address that I mentioned, just feel free to put some designation in the subject line, and I'll be happy to add you that way. I tend to be on my PlayStation a little bit more, just because I have, just most of my games are on the PlayStation 4, but I have some games on the Switch that I've been playing and stuff like that, like Mario Kart and things. If people want to jump on and play with me on that, that'd be a lot of fun. But that's where you can find all of us. And Jim, sponsoring this episode once again, as I mentioned at the beginning, is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What is going on at DCBService.com?
Well, they're continuing the great bundles, 50% off of the regular DC Universe plus Plus, they've got this nice bundle on the Dark Knight's metal special spin-offs. They've got the variant covers at 45% off. But also, on top of great comics, they got a great deal on this Jonathan Kent Superboy and his dog Crypto packaged together. 20% off, only $51.99. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I mentioned the deals of the week, and be sure to check those out. They have the Wonder Woman 100 Project, 50% off, only $6.49 for that book. They have Cave Carson as a cybernetic guy, 50% off, only $8.49. Absolute Why the Last Man hardcover, Volume 3. This has my highest possible recommendation. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. It's on my short list. 50% off, only $62.50. It was a 60-issue series, for those of you that hadn't read it before. And all 60 issues are collected into 3 Absolute Edition volumes. They are all available over at InStockTrades.com. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Why the Last Man, the Absolute Edition is absolutely the way to go on reading that particular series. It's just a breathtaking book. So that's Absolute Why the Last Man. And I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. Our next episode, Jim, we are finally here. 500 shows. And our 500 show, we decided to go all Golden Age. We're going to first appearances. So the books we're going to be doing, just so you can join along with us if you'd like to, we're going to do Detective 27, the Batman origin portion of it, which is a 6-page story. Detective Comics number 38, Robin's first appearance story. We're going to do Action Comics number 1, the full issue. At least we're getting these from Comixology. All-Star Comics number 3, we're going to do the complete issue because it's the first appearance of the JSA, but they have mini stories involving each of the JSA characters in there. So we're going to do that in All-Star Comics number 3. All-Star Comics number 8, we're going to do the Wonder Woman story only from that issue, but then follow it up by doing the full issue of Sensation Comics. So there's a lot of content contained in what we're mentioning there, but those are the specifics as far as what we're covering. We decided to do a lot of firsts. So our thinking was the first Batman, the first Superman, the first Robin, the first Wonder Woman full issue, and the first superhero team, which was the Justice Society collected in All-Star Comics number 3. So we figured that would be kind of something different that we haven't done on the podcast, and the 500th episode was fitting because there's a lot of content there we've never discussed before. I'm really excited to talk about that. So we will be back next episode with the 500 show. And certainly we're going to have listener voicemails, comments, and things like that. So please feel free to get those in over the next week or so, and we'd love having you a part of the show. So we will see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.